invited here. But thank you for coming. We'll go ahead and call this to order. My name is Leonard Whalen. I'm the Deputy Superintendent here in the district, and I'm also the person that was assigned by the board to do this particular hearing. So we'll go ahead and we're calling that to order at this time. With our statement of purpose here, pursuant to 702 KAR 4180 implementation guidelines, the Kentucky Schools Facilities Planning Manual, this hearing is now convened. With that being said, the local Board of Education has submitted the proposed draft of the facilities plan to the Department of Education. This accepted proposed draft facilities plans is to be reviewed tonight in this local public hearing. And something you have attached is actually that facilities plan. And just briefly, our local facilities planning committee, or LPC, has met several times over the past several weeks and going into months to put together this particular plan. With that being said, the LPC has advertised the local public hearing 14 days prior to this hearing. The local public hearing, we do have a sign-in sheet here. We have a recording device to document all these proceedings, which will go to the Department of Education. We do have a public address system that you can hear right now to allow all those speaking to be heard. And with that being said, this local public hearing is for the purpose of hearing and documenting testimony. My job is to document the public comments. It's not within my purview to sway public opinion or to comment on the proposed plan. So with that being said, I'm going to ask John Gilbert, who's with Ross Tarn Architects that handles our facilities, to come up and kind of review the facilities plan at this time. Mr. Gilbert.
Thanks, Lenny. The plan that's before you is on the white sheet that's in front of you. This is the Gallatin County Schools District Facilities Plan. This is what will be for the next 4 years for the school district. The plan, you will also be able to find it on KD's website once the state board approves this plan. I'm just going to go through the list here through the plan. The plan of school organization, that's the current long-range plan. This is how the facilities are set up. You have a P, which is a preschool, kindergarten through second grade facility at your lower elementary, a 3 through 5, an upper elementary, and a 6 through 8, your middle school. Those two facilities are, currently what we're currently in right now. And then the 9 through 12, your high school. Again, the school centers, all of them, the secondary is your high school, the middle school, you have a middle school that's also shared with the upper elementary, and then the elementary schools listed there at the lower and upper elementary, of course the upper being shared with the middle school. All of those are permanent facilities and listed in organization, as we've talked about at the plan of school organization. To that, there's a student enrollment. That's typically used end of year of the previous year, and then the capacity of those buildings as they've been calculated through the evaluation process. That's listed there. In terms of the priorities, what's listed is a priority 1. This is projects for capital construction priorities to schedule after the 2011, basically over the course of the next few years. These are the priorities for the school district as the LPC and currently the school board through this hearing to date have seen fit as a priority. The school board will be reviewing this one more time after this hearing, and we'll be hearing comments along with this plan one last time after next meeting. The Gallatin County High School, there's a roof replacement that qualifies for this plan. This is in the earlier phases, the 1993, 92 sections of that building. That's currently listed for the high school. There's also a Gallatin County Alternative School to construct 4 alternative classrooms, 1 administrative area, and 1 multi-purpose room. Square footages are listed there, and also the price pricing there as well, which is used as a 3/4 means cost data that's used across the state for these plans. Priority 4 is a new central bus garage, maintenance and storage facility to construct one 3-bay garage with a maintenance and storage place, and those are listed there accordingly. Also a central office, to construct a new central office as listed there as well. These are plans from the capital construction process, the priority 1s and 4s that are listed that qualify through the state process for district unmet need that qualify for restricted funding at the state level. And that's what these priorities are listed at. Those totals are listed under a district unmet need of a cost opinion of $6,351,811. That's the current cost opinion that the Department of Education uses through their 3/4 means cost data and as analyzed through this process. And then under priority 5, which is discretionary projects that don't necessarily qualify for those restricted funds, but must be in conjunction with other priorities or can be done outside those purviews. You have a Gallatin County High School listing with athletic facility needs shall include but not be limited to completing athletic field work, new track work, football field lighting, additional football track seating and press box, softball field press box, and additional tennis courts. That's got an estimated cost opinion of $1.3 million listed at this time. And then a new Gallatin County field house with a health and wellness, free weights, and 2 locker rooms listed there under discretionary items. This is the plan as it currently exists. And that's pretty much a reading of this plan.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. With that being said, now get to the point where we have reading of written testimony, including that sent or emailed to the school district. I'm not aware, I've not received any written testimony. Is anyone here, any members of our committee, received any written testimony? I've not heard of any nor seen any, so I don't believe there's any written testimony. Do we have anyone who would like to give oral testimony regarding the facilities plan? Anyone for oral testimony who would like to speak? Yes, sir. Come on up, Jack.
I don't need that mic. I think y'all will hear me. My first question I asked you, John, on
Yes.
district unmet needs, my understanding of that is the money on this, the state will not back you on. Is that correct? Or you can't receive funding from the state for that?
Now, this district unmet need is a listing. These are priorities that are simply listed to qualify for restricted funds at the state level.
That's up here under capital construction, 1, 2, and 4.
Well, under what's listed is simply, there are other priorities listed, but the needs are not identified in this school district. There's a 1B and a 4. The B being just a classification by the state. Priority 1 means that it can qualify for educational type facilities in the upcoming years.
Well, there was, I may not understand this. I mean, you got 1B, new construction there, and then you go to 4, and that's under capital construction priorities as well. But as far as priorities, I guess is what I'm trying to get to. The roof on the high school is the next thing to go, correct?
That would qualify.
That
Priority 1s and priority 2s are usually K through 12 educational facilities, and those usually have a priority over support spaces like bus garages and central offices and things like that. Once those things are realized, completed, then you get down into the priority 3s and 4s, which there were no 3s identified in your school district. But as a 4, you have the new bus garage in the central office.
And I'll add some to that, Jack. I think to answer your question,
our first priority is the high school roof. Then our second priority would be to consider this alternative school situation, a potential field house. And then our next priority would be a bus garage. And then the priority after that would be a central office project.
Okay, well, on the high school, the replacement or renovation of the roof, whichever, the way I understood it, he's talking like the first phase that was built in 93 or 94. So I will, and any of you that don't know, I will back that recommendation up 100%. I know that roof needs to be worked on. But the other thing is this alternative school and the field house. How, if that's taken priority over this bus garage. And you that's sitting out there, if you don't know who I am, Jack Webster. I apologize for not introducing myself. To my understanding, there is 25 that sits on this facilities planning committee. Is that correct? And not a soul out of any of that has anything to do with transportation. Is that correct?
Actually, I would say I do, Jack, but it doesn't come down to that. Really, this is not the place to discuss this. We've had multiple meetings before now, Jack. The way KDE wants us to proceed and recommends us to proceed is to take care of student educational areas first. And that would be the alternative school ahead of the bus garage.
Okay, my question there is, I understand, Lenny, and so whoever else is sitting in this room.
Sure.
Them kids need to be taken care of.
Sure.
There's no question about it. But how do you plan on getting them kids? If you can't get them kids to and from school, then you don't need these buildings.
I agree. I totally agree with you. That's one of our big priority needs as well, Jack. But realistically, KDE looks at the educational spaces first. I mean, that's where they want us to put our money first before we start to look at these other spaces.
But, you know, and you can look around and see, and I'm the only one here tonight from transportation. You know, nobody else has concerns, Lenny, but I've been here since
I understand. I think
I
there's
started
some,
driving in 1989, and we was told then we will get a bus driver.
Sure,
And this is 2011,
I
and
understand.
we still keep getting buildings and buildings and buildings.
Absolutely. Well, it's on the radar here, but we've got to take care of the student instructional space first. And that's, you know, but that is on the radar, as you can see here.
Look,
And
I don't think, this is just my own opinion, but this alternative, I can't even see the paper now, but the alternative school / field house, the alternative, this field house, I think is the big thing that's going on here. And if it don't have anything to do with the ball down here, then it don't mean nothing to Gallatin County.
But that's your opinion.
And
Jack.
and this is a public meeting
Absolutely.
to voice my opinion.
Sure, absolutely.
And I hope each and every one of you understand where I'm coming from.
Sure.
But I know I'm not gonna get nowhere tonight, but I did want to voice my opinion, because ain't nobody else knows or thinks that it's gonna happen. If they did, then they would have been here to back me. But, yeah, on that high school roof, I'm 110% for that. It needs to be done. Take care of the buildings that we've got. But each and every one of you can look out that window right there and look at that piece of garbage right over there that we've got to work out of for a so-called bus garage. It's an eyesore sitting in front of this brand new building right here we've got.
Jack, we had multiple discussions for the last 2 months about that, and exactly what you said is exactly what we said. So, you know, this is not new information. This is something we've had multiple discussions about.
I wouldn't, I mean, before it's all said and done, like I said, I'm just one person, and I can't make it go or not go, but, you know, I'd really like for each and every one of you sitting on that planning committee as well as the school board to, you know, think this through.
Well, I think kind of the way the committee looked at that is, and Mr. Gilbert will tell you this, if we put that at the top of the list, KDE would not allow it. They would say, you've got student instructional spaces you need to address before you get to this space.
Okay, then what? I know, and this is, rush, rush, rush. That's the world today. There's no question about it. But when KDE looks at this and sees that new bus garage up there, at that point, Lenny, what does it take to say, well, maybe this is, excuse me, maybe this is priority over another educational building?
They've seen it.
Which avenue do we need to take to go?
We've had that in the past. I mean, the prior KDE facilities director was very well aware of our bus situation. And unfortunately, he's no longer there, but, you know, that's one of the battles we continue to try to fight. But I appreciate your input, Jack. I don't think you're off base.
But that, I mean, and again, I just like for each and every one of you to consider what's been mentioned here tonight and,
Sure.
you know,
You bring some good
Take it
points,
in
Jack.
there,
And
and,
we've had multiple discussions about that very situation, so this is not the first time it's came up. Mr. Zimmer?
William, am I just seeing this wrong, talking about the alternative school and the field house? The alternative school is listed under the two, but down under the discretionary, the field house is also listed separately. Is that correct? Those are basically separated out?
That is correct. And we're not sure exactly how KDE will look at all that until they go through the documentation and look at it and see, you know, how that's going to come back to us. And that'll be talked about at the very end of the agenda down here, kind of how the process will go after this meeting tonight.
But under the 1B, 2 is actually just the alternatives?
Correct. That's built.
And under the 5, the discretionary is where the field house is actually budgeted.
Yes. Thank you, Jack.
is there any questions for me?
Thank you, Jack. Thank you for that information, Jack. And that is, we did have multiple discussions about that in our prior meetings. I wish you would have been there, Jack, to hear some of those discussions and been involved in that. Any other folks would like to speak? Parks, come on up.
I don't need a microphone. I had one question here. Under number 4, you got capital construction priorities, and then in parentheses, okay, whatever you want, it says regardless of schedule. What does that mean? Could you explain that?
What does that mean, John?
So that way when I put this up on the video news, people will understand it?
Sure. During this process, during the local planning committee process, when you look at this, there's priorities, and there's 5 priorities. There's a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 1 is what you do in the first biennium, or the first 2 years of it, but the legislators and on the budget meet in every other year. That's supposed to be in that process. On priority 2s, if you had enough need, and a lot of school districts, when you get through a K through 12 process, might have multiple schools listed, and they might prioritize a priority 1, what's going to happen in the next 2 years, or qualify in the next 2 years, and have a number of other things as a priority 2. We don't have priority 2s listed because from a K through 12 standpoint, when you're sitting in this new facility and you see the work that's being done over at the lower elementary, a lot of this schoolwork is less than 30 years old. In order for a K through 12 work to qualify, it's got to be either 30 years or older, or it has to be a roof replacement, an HVAC replacement, or a life safety issue to be older than 15 years. So what really happens is the high school roof replacement in your earlier phases is a 1B, and that's the Gallatin County High School. That's where the roof replacement comes in. The B is a classification. It is nothing more than a 1A would be a brand new school, if you will, for B, because you're growing as a growth district or something like that. The B is simply a classification, and that you're replacing, maintaining, those kind of instruments. So the high school itself is a renovation for the roof replacement. The other one is just the alternative school for educational facilities, if you will, not the field house. And it is listed as a priority 1B as well. 1 and 2 are both listed under 1B. 1 is not necessarily a priority over the other. They're both listed under 1B. Both of those are a similar priority. And if you look under new construction, and this is read under all plans across the state, to replace inadequate spaces, expand existing or new buildings for educational purposes, consolidate schools, or replace deteriorated facilities. And priority 2 say the exact same thing. But that ends up happening in what they call the second biennium, or after the first 2 years. This is a 4-year plan. So in 4 years, this LPC will meet again. After those priorities are looked at, then you have that second tier. We don't have those because we don't have that need. Under a priority 3, if you had gymnasiums, auxiliary gymnasiums, cafeterias, those kind of things, that would be a priority 3, but those needs were not identified as additional things that you don't already have at your current facilities. So you don't have priority 2s, you don't have priority 3s, you have a small priority 1 listing there with the high school roof replacement that qualifies, it's over 15 years of age, and then the alternative school where you have those in what they would classify as temporary facilities at this time to be a new, more permanent structure. Now, under priority 4, those are management support areas for the school district. These are simply listed, regardless of schedule, these are listed there. If I didn't have K through 12 type facilities, your priority would be this 4, and it would be listed as 4 as a management support area. So the new central bus garage is listed as a 4 because it's construct, acquisition, or renovation of central offices, bus garages, or central storage facilities or stores, as it says. Basically, the 1 through 4 is not only priorities, but it's also a classification of types of spaces that you see as priorities to identify throughout the process. And so you have the bus garage and the office and the central office listed there for priority 4. And then they have a district unmet need line, and that total is showing you that all the items above that can qualify for state restricted funds. And there's a level of tier of types of funds that the LPC has been informed of, things called SFCC, SEEK funds, capital outlay funds, a lot of different types of funding that have certain levels of restriction at the state level. Those things qualify for that. When you get to a priority 5, the discretionary projects, these are improvements by construction or renovation. These are not assessed in that $6.3 million or that state qualifying funds that you see for 1 through 4. It's the items like athletic facilities or field houses or things that are in addition to, but don't necessarily qualify for that total. That total is part of the total that the state sees to help calculate those formulas that help them decide, what apportionment that Gallatin County can possibly receive. Does that answer your question?
I appreciate all the information you just gave me, but it still didn't answer my question, what regardless of schedule means.
Regardless of schedule is that this can happen at any particular time. But this particular plan doesn't deal with the funding. Your school district and a lot of the funding priorities happen through this 1 and 4 set. These can kind of happen at any time, but you have to have the funding to make that happen.
So in other words, it don't matter what the state says, they can go ahead and go forward with them projects.
Well, not necessarily. 1s and 2s, restricted funds go for educational facilities first. But if you have the funding capabilities, regardless of schedule, is if you have those funding capabilities, you do have the ability to do those. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. So in other words, that money there does not come from the state?
Potentially. It is not to say that you couldn't get it, but the priority comes through the K through 12.
What percentage of number 4 does come from the state, would you say?
I am not a financial person. I couldn't necessarily tell you, the specifics of what may or may not come with those. This is particularly, the intent of this is to look at the plan itself and to look at these priorities. The specifics as to what that funding is, I can't really tell you, as to how that may occur down the line.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Artis, for the question. Anybody else have anything they would like to state or oral testimony regarding the plan?
I have a question.
Okay, step on up, please.
My name is Jessica Wheeler, and I have family that works here. According to the one that you all posted on the internet,
Okay.
it looks like the alternative school and field house are 2 separate buildings. I just want to make sure I understand, because this one makes it look like it's the same building under number 2. And I want to clarify that they are 2 separate buildings.
No, and John can kind of show you that on the sheet here.
Yeah, I mean, that shouldn't be listed that way. I mean, the way we got that, what she was looking at, changes. Somehow that was.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Basically, that was split out from the initial proposal we did. Really, that field house, and that was a good point you make, that field house should technically be down on the bottom with the very bottom items that are down there. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
I just want to verify that that's going to be two separate things.
Yeah, well, technically it'll be one building, but it may not be able to be built all at one time if, you know, the funding's not there.
Okay. And the second question, you mentioned when you're talking about the priorities that life safety would be and would bring the building up to priority. Those men's lives are in danger every day because they don't have the facility for storage of the chemicals in the right way. And just, if you look at the brick, you can see right through it.
Sure, we've got multiple concerns about that building. We've laid that out.
So it looks like that might be one way to get that bus garage up to the priority because their lives are in danger.
We agree, we got concerns about that building, and that's why it's on the sheet here. And I wish it was a little higher myself, honestly, but, you know, that's, KDE says that the academic facilities we need to look at first, so that's basically what we're attempting to do. I appreciate the input. Any other questions or oral statements? Thank you very much, folks. With that being said, following the local hearing here, the Department of Education will prepare a hearing officer's report. This report will be submitted to the local Board of Education for review. If accepted, the local Board of Education votes for approval and submits the final proposal to the Kentucky Department of Education. If rejected, the local board submits a letter to the department for review. The local board will be asked to submit a letter to the LPC that gives specific direction as to the board's concerns and intent. This will then be reviewed by the LPC, and the plan will be adjusted and returned to the board for their review to submit it back to the department. Currently, the final proposal is scheduled to be submitted to the state board in their June 2011 meeting. Following the meeting, the local school board will be notified of the state board's decision. If the facilities plan is rejected by the state board, the local Board of Education must submit a modification of the hearing officer report from the Kentucky Department of from the Kentucky Department. When accepted, the local Board of Education submits the final proposal to the Kentucky Department of Education. This final proposal is submitted to the state school board in their regular meetings. Following the meeting, the local school board is notified of the state school board's decision. With that being said, folks, that will conclude our hearing here. I appreciate everyone's participation and everyone that showed up. I hope you found it very informational, and we will be forwarding all this information on to the Kentucky Department of Education. Thank you very much.
Thank you, folks. That'll conclude the meeting. Or the hearing, I guess you could say.